breastfeeding an older child because I was featured in an article in the Irish Times last week, and the heading was Breastfeeding Beyond Infancy, and I was interviewed because I am breastfeeding my almost 3-year-old son, and I also breastfed my daughter till she was 2.5 years old. So yeah, it got a lot of positive feedback, and a lot of people messaged me, and it was shared lots and lots of times on different Facebook groups. And I guess I just feel like if it's such a big topic that people were so, responsive to, that maybe I should do a vlog on it as well. So yeah, there's a lot of different things that I'd like to talk about relating to breastfeeding a toddler. Although he's almost 3, as I say, he's going to be 3 next week, so he's more like a child rather than a toddler. But anyway, so I think the first thing it's important to like if all you've experienced is breastfeeding a baby and a newborn baby, sometimes when you think about someone breastfeeding an older child, you might think, wow, that must be so hard. But in fact, it's actually really easy, because it's very, very different breastfeeding a toddler than it is to breastfeed a newborn. I know because I've done both, and I know how hard it can be to breastfeed a newborn, especially on your first, because it's so new and you and your baby are learning something new, a new art form, breastfeeding, and you need support and accurate information and perseverance and, more support. Really, support is the key. So whereas, I did encounter difficulties at the beginning of both my breastfeeding journeys with each child, now breastfeeding is actually probably the easiest part of mothering, because we have come to a kind of a situation where it doesn't happen very often. Like, it does happen every day, but maybe a couple times a day, depending on what we're doing. If we're out and about, less usually, because we're both busy. My son nurses to sleep every night, but if I'm not around, then he doesn't. He, listens to music with his dad, or he sings him a song, or he can sleep without it. But it's most nights I'm here, and yeah, he nurses to sleep. So that's a definite every day. And then usually in the morning as well when he wakes up. But sometimes if I'm up early, it doesn't happen as well. It's not regular, really, at this point. It could be 2 or 3 times a day, it could be 5 times a day, or it could be not at all in the day. So for that reason, it's quite fluid and it's easy. There's no issues around breastfeeding, like no physical issues. It's definitely a parenting tool that I use, because I find that it is an instant comforter if something is wrong, like if he hurt himself or he's upset for some reason. It's an instant comfort, and I'm delighted to be able to offer him that, because it's always there, and it's just it's a way of touching base. I feel like, it's a physical contact, but also it's like it's kind of nearly resets us emotionally as well. It's just a lovely way to calm down and to reconnect. And although I don't work outside the home much, I do teach a few yoga classes, but I know for moms who do, it's a lovely way to reconnect after having been out at work. Something that I think is quite important is that to know that it's actually recommended by both the World Health Organization and the HSE, which is the Irish Health Organization, to breastfeed exclusively for the first 6 months, and then with complementary foods up until 2 years and beyond. So really what I'm doing is quite normal, in that I'm just following those recommendations. I didn't do that on purpose, let's say, but it's nice to know that they're there, and that 2 very big health organizations support what I'm doing, and anyone else who's in my situation doing the same thing. So I think it's just nice to keep that in mind, that that is what's recommended for the health of our children. And yeah, it's kind of reassuring as well, to know that. Another thing that I like to remind myself of, if little doubts creep into your mind when you're parenting, that's normal. There are many, many different ways of parenting. I don't believe that there's one perfect way of parenting, but we do what's best for our family and what works for us. But at the same time, it's really good to remember that not only are there nutritional benefits and a kind of emotional benefits of continuing to breastfeed, beyond 2 years, but also there's the I can't even say the word, immunological reasons to continue to breastfeed. And I suppose that means just that it supports their immune system. If there is an illness going around in the family or the school, the community or whatever, that your child, if your child is breastfeed, that the breast milk makes antibodies to whatever that illness is, and either the breastfed child will either avoid that altogether or won't be as, won't get it as badly as, say, children who aren't breastfed. So I think that's really nice to remember as well, that there are, as well as the nutritional and all the other benefits, that it's like, yeah, it supports their immune system, and young children are exposed to so many different germs, they're sticking their hands everywhere, and it's nice to remember that if something's going around, that the breastfeeding really supports their immune system. I was asked a question about what are the cons of breastfeeding an older child, and to be honest, I thought, and I couldn't think of anything that really, I couldn't think of anything negative to say about it. Although the only thing I could think of was kind of other people's perceptions of what you're doing, because sometimes it can be hard, especially in Ireland with such low breastfeeding rates in general, to do something that's so kind of against the grain. We live in Ireland, we live in a bottle feeding, formula feeding culture, and I suppose the other kind of ideas of other people is what is the negative aspect of it, really. But personally, I haven't had any negative experiences of breastfeeding. I've had, I suppose, a few people ask me about it, and I think that just because of the way I am, I didn't read too much into it, and I didn't really get defensive. It's just when people aren't used to something, I suppose it's normal to ask, and I just kind of really say what it's working for us, and that's really what's important. And I think that anyone who is doing the same as me, who decides to continue to breastfeed, or doesn't decide, it just kind of happens, well, that's our choice, and it doesn't really matter what anyone else thinks. Yeah, like, you don't like it, well, don't do it yourself. That's your decision, But I do think that having the article in the paper was a nice way to kind of, for other moms around the country maybe who might have read it and said, oh, that's so nice to see that someone else is doing the same as me. And I got so many text messages and, private messages, and from people who I maybe met once a few years ago and different things. And it was just really reassuring and really nice to see that, it had a positive impact on people. And I don't know, I just think my message for other breastfeeding moms, or moms who are breastfeeding, older kids, is fair play, and we are doing the best for our kids, and it's a gift. I really think it's like a mothering tool and a gift, but I also think it has to be two-way. I don't think it should be at this point it's not on demand. There has to be a give and take, and I think it's really important to set that, to start setting those little boundaries of when it's okay to breastfeed and when it's not. For me, as in, I don't really feel like it right now, so unless it's something really major, that he's really hurt himself or something, then I think that give and take is really important, because it's so important to take care of yourself, because when you're a mother, I feel like you're constantly giving, and it's the natural way of mothering. Your kids don't ever say, go take a break and sit down there, and it's just, it doesn't happen. So we have to take care of ourselves, and I think that by setting some limits from the age of 18 months on, not when they're babies, but that helps to make the relationship work, because it is a relationship, and I think it's important to think of ourselves as well as the child. That's all I have to say on breastfeeding an older child. I probably could continue forever. I have been on a bit of a hibernation over winter. I haven't vlogged in a while, so I apologize for that, but thank you so much for watching. And if there's anything in particular you'd like me to talk about or you know, discuss, then I'd be delighted to do so. Thanks so much for watching and take care.